SEC
No,
one.
I don't think she represented.
That's Mark Cohen, I believe, which is Sam's attorney. That he
okay. Yeah.
So no,
hold on,
she
Mark
was
Cohen.
the head of the. She was one of the directors.
I've seen Mark Cohen in my space a few times. I'm like, that name rings a bell. No joke, a couple of times. Now I know to bring him up. So it's Mark Cohen. Hold on, Alexander. I'll give you the mic in a sec. So Alex, can you send me through Mark Cohen's details so I know who he is next time he's in the audience? I can bring them up. So if he's Sam's lawyer, I'd love to invite him on stage. Not that I don't think he'll come up. So back to what you're saying, Alexandra. What you're saying is that you think Caroline gave information to the authorities that led to Sam's arrest?
Yes, and she may have, or somebody may have leaked something to the press that hasn't been released yet, because we wouldn't actually know who her counsel was, because to my knowledge, nothing has been filed, right? So knowing who counsel is usually something that ends up being released on behalf of the client or from the client themselves. So the fact that we know who it is, something happened to make us know who she is. Who she is someone who is the former head of the Department of Enforcement. She also ran, I think, the finance and I think they called it blockchain or crypto or something like that committee at her firm, which is a big firm. And but I mean, Wilmer Hale is not like the ones that you may have heard of that are huge, like Skadden Arps or whatever. It's more of a boutique firm. It really does do a lot more in just securities law. And again, like I said, the litigation area. So this woman is a powerhouse who actually knows all the securities laws and has had sort of a mixed bag. She also defended, I think she defended Elizabeth Holmes in Theranos. So she's also used to very high profile cases. One of the speculations is that because that it's likely that Caroline hasn't actually said anything or has said something, has offered herself as state's witness, because clearly Sam was throwing her under the bus, right?
He was? How was Sam throwing Caroline? And for anyone that doesn't know, because I know some people are not from crypto, I'll give you the mic right after Alexandra, just to give us a bit of an overview of the whole SBF saga, how it started, just a general overview for anyone that hasn't been keeping up, which I don't think is many people. So I'll let you do that in a bit. But Alexandra, Caroline was the CEO of Alameda, which was the hedge fund that Sam owned along with FTX. And she obviously knew a lot. They were close. She was in that castle with him in that mansion where they were all having orgies. She was very close to Sam. I don't know if she was his girlfriend or not. And she was one of the key people, the key 5 people that were responsible, or there's 10 people in total, but like the top 5 responsible for most things. Simon, did I get it right?
CoinDesk has just confirmed he's been arrested, just for information.
Did they give any other information?
I just saw the tweet, so I haven't read the article.
It's the same as what I tweeted. It's literally the same thing.
Okay.
And what does did you have a look at the article, Ian?
Yeah, no, it's just repeating what the what do you call it, the Office for the Attorney General in Ministry of Legal Affairs in the Bahamas posted.
Have you been keeping up with the story, by the way, Ian?
Not too much. I mean, I kind of sat in a little bit earlier on the call that he was on with Unusual Whales. He was playing video games. He was playing League of Legends while talking to them. He
confirmed it.
He was going to be free. Yeah.
Yeah, he confirmed it. He was literally playing. Simon, you know how someone was making game? I'll go back to you in a sec, Alexandra. But Simon, do you remember how people were making jokes when he was on our space and other spaces? There was clicking sound in the background, and people were like he's playing League of Legends. I thought it was just.
He's stuck in Bronze 3. He'd been playing that for, 3+ years now, and he's stuck in Bronze 3. I mean, you have to be literally retarded to suck at the game.
He was playing the video games.
Oh my god, you guys are talking about how bad he is at the game.
He was playing video games whilst giving the interviews? No way.
You can hear the clip.
What the hell? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay.
He spent his last moments of freedom playing a video game and spending time in Twitter space instead of actually doing something worthwhile. It's insane. The guy has no sense of anything. I mean, he has this lackadaisical attitude. He thinks he's going to be free. He seemed pretty confident that he was not going to get arrested and that he thought he could just simply evade the subpoenas that are being sent his way by the Senate as well as the House. Like, he doesn't care. And, well, too bad for him. I think that pissed off a lot of people in Congress. They're not having it.
Yeah, so I think tomorrow is the court hearing. Reuters reported that he'll be he'll be appearing from Bahamas, and CNBC says he won't be appearing. Did we get any closer to what's happening tomorrow? Obviously, he's now arrested, so how does that impact things?
I think he's going to be extradited, so I don't know if he's even going to have a court hearing in the Bahamas yet. It's unsure. I mean, I'm unsure.
But Caroline's at the hearing, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, the throwing under the bus thing was essentially Caroline allegedly confirmed that SBF knew that client funds were being used by Alameda. And then SBF came on Mario's Twitter space and all the others saying that he didn't know. So that created a prisoner's dilemma, a classic prisoner's dilemma between Caroline or SBF, who's going to throw each other under the bus, because one would be lying, which I think is what Alex was saying, is that this is maybe what accelerated the arrest potentially, because playing them off against each other meant that there's a slam dunk there.
Simon, what are the odds that Sam said something in the space the past week or two that also incriminated himself? Is it like
very
high? It's the Caroline thing?
I was gonna say,
be something in the space.
How nice would it be if it was in our space when Ran and Simon put him on the spot, and he I think especially with Ran's one, and he confirmed creating synthetic Bitcoin from memory. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think he did a lot of that.
Really good job. He did a good job talking over and over again, and just further incriminating him. And then CoffeeZilla did such a good job, you guys, with that question, really nailing him around
the hat trick.
He's not a smart criminal. But he's an idiot.
Another thing is,
but those terms and conditions.
I understand is when these types of things normally go down, these people are not in spaces talking and being as flagrant as Sam was in multiple places. It was bound to happen, and I think that they're going to take him down really hard because he absolutely said incriminating evidence.
That's what was so confusing, right? Because we all thought he's got like this double bluff genius, like owns the government type of, and maybe it's just that, like, I don't know, maybe he's just got a mental condition and he can't.
Who does?
It's called being addicted to video games, is what it is. Because I was on that space, Mario, when last time when I was here, he was typing away. Did that really get confirmed? Because that shit's hilarious.
Yes, somebody actually saw him playing League of Legends. Kind of somebody else was on there and took a screenshot of him doing it.
Sorry, Alex.
Oh, someone took a screenshot. Did you say Alex?
I think that there was a screenshot of somebody that somebody was actually playing like with him. They were playing at the same time. When he was playing League of Legends.
When he did his interview with Eric Voorhees, and Eric Voorhees caught him like basically red-handed, and he caught him totally off guard about basically working with Gary. He was playing League of Legends on video, because clearly he was playing a video game. Like, it's not a secret. Like, I think it's like you said, Simon, some sort of coping mechanism.
So I want to go to Peter, if you don't mind, Peter, and then Alexandra. What can we expect? Not sure if you guys can answer this. If there's any attorneys in the audience, do put your hand up. We're inviting a couple right now. But what do you expect in terms of sentences for Sam, and how bad is he of a situation is he, Peter?
Well, it depends on what charges they go for. If it's federal, and it looks like it is, obviously, there's going to be some various guidelines. There's probably some fraud that they can go for, to be simple. And it's going to be statutorily prescribed, right? So we really don't know. I would expect, by the way, that as soon as this broke, the DOJ started really loading up and trying to figure out what happened. I'd be surprised if there were any, regulatory scrutiny prior to that. But he was never going to get off the wire, it looks like. And it looks like there's a very motivated Justice Department as well. So they're certainly going to, in my opinion, try to throw the book at him, but they can still only go as far as the documents they have and the testimony they have from Caroline. So still very much an open question in my view.
And when you say testimony for Caroline, is that confirmed or that's speculation for now?
No, not at all. But I was listening to Alex and she made a very persuasive argument about it.
Yeah, what Alex? I wonder two things right now. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was giving you the mic. I was saying your name.
Oh, okay. So I think I have a lag. I'm really sorry. I think that there's a lag between, when My app is not 100%. Okay, so I'm sorry, because like I'm hearing things like after when it's silent and then there's talking, so I'm having a connection issue, I think. But so two things. One is I do wonder because what's his name? Sam mentioned him several times. Nishad Singh, I want to know where he is because he was the CFO and I want to know where the money is. The first thing that occurred to me when I saw that Stephanie was hired is Caroline's got cash. And who else has cash if she has cash? Sam has cash. There's cash out there, right? So that money wasn't spent. It's not, hidden. She has some and she knows where more is. That's what makes it persuasive, right? Because at the end of the day, people want to know about the crimes, but really they want to know where the money is. So that I think is one of there's no way she could hire this woman otherwise. She like Stephanie's like, more expensive than me. so that would be and the retainer I'm sure she has is ridiculous. So if we're talking about a layout of like 50K or so, or right off the bat and then hourly charges are added on, we're talking about she's got a stockpile of cash that she'd have to prove before Stephanie would take on this case, because taking yourself off of a case is an actual procedure that requires the judge to agree, and it's a big issue. So she's got to make sure that she's being Stephanie has to make sure she can actually go the distance. But I really want to know about these two other people, Gary Wong, who was the CTO who can't code.
Sorry, Gary Wong, the CTO who can't code.
He says himself he didn't do any of the code and he can't code. And what's his name? Nishad Singh, who was the CFO who created the mystery spreadsheet, apparently, where they said, oh, okay, just put all the money in Alameda and then we'll keep track of it. And it's non-existent. So all the money was in Alameda and they didn't actually keep track of it. And that Sam didn't understand the three main types of accounts that he had, because every question kept making him go towards margin accounts, those accounts where FTX actually invested on behalf of people, where they were used as a broker. But the accounts that people are worried about are the tokenized securities account, right? Where there was apparently nothing there, but that should be like a locked drawer, essentially, with one share of Tesla or whatever for every token issued. And then the other are the custodial accounts where you put your money in so that you can do trades, but that money is like FTX is like a valet, where you are letting them hold your money, but it's expressly understood that it's not their money to use in any way. And that's like safe deposit box money. But every time you guys
we got an official confirmation. Sorry to interrupt, Alex. I just tweeted the pin. Sorry, what am I trying to say? Pin the tweet. They said the Bahamian government has arrested, and it was on request of the US government.
There we go.
Yeah, and the one thing
based on sealed indictment filed by the SDNY, we expect to move to unseal the indictment in the morning, and we'll have more to say at that time. So tomorrow morning, we'll have more information. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, that'll give us all the information we need as far as sentencing guidelines. But when the money involved and the number of victims involved are so high, so people can start speculating wildly, 10 plus years is very much in bounds here. These are billions and billions of dollars. And if they go for wire fraud and criminal fraud and even money laundering, then there's a whole litany of opportunity. The only possible way out for him is if there's a bigger fish that he can sing on. Like if Gary Wang or anybody else was really pulling the strings, and SBF can pull this sort of like, I'm really stupid act, it might persuade a jury, but probably not.
So do you think he'd be in one of those like club fed prisons, or do you think he'd be in like real prison? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I really don't know how that works now.
Can I also add, I'm curious because this whole act of, I think it was a friend of mine in another space said, but like he's trying to basically get manslaughter instead of murder, right? If we're looking at it in that context, by playing the dumb thing, is that not going to play out in this case then? Because it doesn't really matter,
was going towards his
10 years.
That was I think the statement that was going towards the whole point of his apology tour was to clarify his state of mind and shift blame, right? So to clarify his state of mind is one of the things that we talked about was the two parts of crime is actus reus and mens rea. That's bad mind and bad act. But the when you're dealing with just civil issues, you're just dealing with the action. When you're dealing with criminal issues, you're also dealing with the intention. And that, I think, was what all of the, it was a mistake. I didn't know. I was trying to keep the relationship separate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I was
Will
video
that actually
gaming.
work?
I wasn't paying attention.
Exactly. I didn't know I was behind the wheel of the car. Oops. I mean, I don't know if that's going to work.
I would just like to point
playing
out
games.
as well.
He's playing
Bloomberg
games.
just announced. No, just like Bloomberg literally just dropped it about 20 minutes late. So just wanted to say kudos to all you guys and Mario for like, yeah.
Hey,
front run Bloomberg.
I wanted to talk about something coming up from Miami. So, we all know that we had a lot of events at Miami. And at Miami, I met someone who Miami events were last week, I think. And I met someone who is the dad of one of the founding members of Avalanche. And they had a lot of money invested in FTX. So this guy was with Sam last week, and they literally slept in the same room, right? So he was that close. So he told me that Joe and Barbara, Sam's parents, they were already in Bahamas, and they already knew. I mean, it's hard I know we all are saying that, okay, finally the extradition and everything is happening, but these guys already knew that Sam was going to get arrested. And what the conversation from there, what it progressed to was that if he comes to US on his own, he could get arrested. However, if he is extradited to US, then he gets some additional rights. Now, I'm trying to go on Google and look at what those additional rights are. And it seems like based on some old cases like US versus Knowles, and I know we have attorneys up here, so they can shed more light on this. But it seems like extradition hearing in this case could actually even happen in Bahamas. And based on the conversation I was having with this guy, he said that the Bahamas government actually likes SBF a lot. And obviously, FTX has brought a lot of money into Bahamas, and the Bahamas government really likes SBF. For them, SBF is still the golden boy of crypto. So I did want to share that perspective. That I know we are saying that he's
would have loved
extradited.
it, but this would be very embarrassing. But I think you've cracked the code there. So it appears that obviously his parents know exactly what he should be doing. So between what you just said and what Alex said, that play the dumb, get the whole homicide instead of murder. And then also there's an extradition strategy, which gives additional. So it seems like, he's not. He knew exactly what he's doing. He's getting the right advice, and it's probably the right strategy for given what he knew was going to happen.
I have a question, Simon and Crypto. Both of you, Crypto Immersion, since both of you are here. If the extradition process goes through, I know the tweet that you just pinned up, Simon, it says that tomorrow they're going to actually open the sealed envelope. Is there a chance that he might actually stand a hearing in Bahamas? And if that happens, if I'm not wrong, in Bahamas, the hearing could be presided over by a single judge, versus if this case was to be brought in US, then there could be a grand jury.
So the sealed indictment is usually done by a grand jury, right? So they got a grand jury to indict him, and that indictment can only be enforced according to U.S. treaty with other countries. And so the order of operations was at least for the legal part was grand jury indictment, which they claimed sealed, right? You can do that. Grand juries are generally sealed. They can be not sealed. And sealed just means private, not made open to the public, but they're saying they're unsealing it, which means it was supposed to be private, but the overriding, one of the parties made an argument that it should be unsealed, and the state agreed. So it's unsealed. and then that's when the extradition can happen. Go ahead.
I have a question. I have a question for you, for Orbis, and for Peter, and anyone else that can answer it. So I've been under the assumption that everything Sam is doing is very calculated, including our interviews. Took me a while to figure out what it is, but then when I heard him the interview, same answer time and time again. He's just trying to say it changed the perception of him, and it worked well with the New York interview that he did, New York Times interview he did, where he got people started clapping at the end, and we had Kevin O'Leary and the other guy, the one that is known to shorting, the hedge fund guy, on bad with names, say he did a tweet. He's like, "Call me crazy, but I think Sam is telling the truth." So like every single step for someone to build, and we had the last space we did on FTX, if you remember everyone, we had the insiders that were investigating, not insiders,
Bill Ackerman?
Not Bill Ackman, the guy that Bill Ackerman hates. They fight. No, Bill Ackman. Yeah, sorry, Bill Ackerman. Sorry. Yeah. So Bill Ackman made a tweet. Yeah, exactly. So, and then we had in the last space, for anyone that missed it, that was an incredible space, and I did a whole thread on it during the space. We had Hussein and Nick come in. They've been investigating FTX for 9 months, I think it was. And they're like, "Mario, we're going to spill all the beans in that space of yours." They got a whole data room of evidence, been shared with the press. It's been shared with lawmakers that have requested it, where they went through the entire story, because they've been doing it since the early days, since they got fucked by Liquid, which is owned by FTX. They investigated everything, the whole web, and they had some speculation, they had some facts, and they kind of differentiated between the two, and it all seemed extremely well planned. What Sam built and what he was building, if he actually pulled it off, and his exchanges, him and Kevin O'Leary and Justin Sun, and that's a speculation, and they're building that liquidity pool among exchanges to become the main exchange for CBDCs, centrally backed digital currencies, which will make him, a big contender to Binance and potentially beat Binance. So for someone to be that intelligent and lead such a plan and such a company, I just don't think it's stupid enough to just like recklessly jump on an interview. Now, why am I saying this? Because I want to go to a question for Alexandra, Orbis, and Peter. So can you repeat, Orbis, what you mean, or whoever? Why could Sam intentionally have done all this? Like he not done it, but why didn't he why didn't he escape Bahamas? Because that was my question from the early days. Was he just he didn't fathom the how big his problem was, and Simon kind of talked about this. It just never clicked for him. We had Martin Shkreli also on the space tell us like it takes a while for these things to sink in because of the enormity of what he did. So that's the first question. Second question, Orbis, I think you were mentioning, and Alexandra agreed, or vice versa, that his parents knew that he was going to get extradited. They were planning for this, and something around a less extreme less extreme sentencing or more rights. Can you elaborate on that point as well? Because I'd be curious to see if this is even well planned.
Hey, so I do not know what additional rights he gets, but then as I mentioned, the person who said all of this to me, that, oh, Sam's definitely getting arrested, but the reason why he hasn't come to US is because if he comes to US, then he gets arrested and he loses his rights. However, if he's extradited to
he's on American soil, I mean, he is under the jurisdiction of the U.S. government. It doesn't really matter what.
Can I just jump in here? Like, I don't know what those additional rights are, but I suspect they're procedural and will have no impact on the substantive resolution of the case.
Yeah, exactly. I think that actually deals with if you're not a U.S. citizen, because there's a lot of extradition that happens with non-U.S. citizens because the crime was committed in the U.S. or the nexus of the crime was in the U.S. So they'll be extradited to the U.S. judicial system, but the additional protections they get are because they're still honored as an overseas national. They have to make sure that there wasn't a particular protection that was granted to the overseas national. And usually that kind of stuff deals with, like, did you have diplomatic immunity? Were you doing something on behalf of a government, or was there some other connection that you have to be careful with? That's when you get the protection of extradition. But I mean, like, there's extra protection in extradition as far as I'm aware. But if you're a U.S. citizen and you are extradited back to the U.S., there isn't any particular protection that I'm aware of.
I want to go to quickly before the question. Alex, do you mind reading the letter? And I know you read the CoinDesk or Cointelegraph article as well. Do you want to summarize that for us, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So again, this is coming from DB Tier 10K on Twitter. So the statement from the Attorney General of the Bahamas, Senator Ryan Pinder, KC, on the arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried. On December 12th, 2022, the Office of the Attorney General of the Bahamas is announcing the arrest by the Royal Bahamas Police Force of Sam Bankman-Fried, aka SBF, former CEO of FTX. SBF's arrest followed receipt of formal notification from the United States that it has filed criminal charges against SBF and is likely to request his extradition. As a result of the notification received and the material provided therewith, it was deemed appropriate for the Attorney General to seek SBF's arrest and hold him in custody pursuant to our nation's Extradition Act. At such time as a formal request for extradition is made, the Bahamas intends to process it promptly, pursuant to Bahamian law and its treaty obligations with the United States. Responding to SBF's arrest, Prime Minister Davis stated, "The Bahamas and the United States have a shared interest in holding accountable all individuals associated with FTX who may have betrayed the public trust and broken the law. While the United States is pursuing criminal charges against SBF individually, the Bahamas will continue its own regulatory criminal investigations into the collapse of FTX with the continued cooperation of its law enforcement and regulatory partners in the United States and elsewhere." Signed from the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
TLDR is that he's screwed.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Guys, I want to. I mean, without getting into ifs and buts, and especially because we have a couple of lawyers here, the question that I wanted to pose, and more as seeking information, just the possibilities of what could happen. Alex, thanks for reading that out, but doesn't that mean that the extradition request by the Bahamas hasn't officially been signed off, which means that there is a chance that SBF might not be extradited to US? That's the first thing, because I'm looking at the extradition treaty, and there are clauses in which they list the scenarios in which extradition can be granted and cannot be granted, and there are a few scenarios.
Obis, I do have Vishal who can actually talk about the Bahamian US extradition treaty. So I think he can answer those points for you. Vishal, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up?
All right, man. Can you give us good, man? Good. It just feels this space is like a bit of a sigh of relief when we're like, at least there's some justice. Because some people started getting me worried, like, hey, he paid off enough politicians, he was not going to get arrested, and I couldn't, I wasn't believing that. So it's good that that wasn't the case. But can you give us more insight into the Bahamian U.S. extradition treaty and what that could mean for Sam?
Yeah, I'll just start with initially. We talked about this last time as well. There's a book called 3 Felonies a Day, which people can read if they're interested, which talks about how determined U.S. prosecutors can really put anyone in jail if they want to. And so I think the idea, very early on, I think the idea from a lot of people that he wasn't going to be arrested just felt structurally wrong to me because of that. There was more than enough evidence to arrest him and to charge him with any number of things. And the Bahamian U.S. extradition treaty is actually very, very flexible and amenable to U.S. interests. The main clause is really, I don't know, I think somebody mentioned this earlier as well, but the main clause is really the idea that if the offense is a crime in both the Bahamas and the United States, regardless of if that offense is defined the same way, if the semantics are the same, if the period of punishment is different, it doesn't matter. If it's a crime in the United States and it's a crime in the Bahamas, then it's applicable for extradition. And so in this case, I would be astonished if Bahamian authorities didn't accept a formal U.S. extradition request. It fits the bill. Again, there was somebody I think mentioned earlier just before I came up that there's a set of stipulations in the Bahamian U.S. extradition treaty, and
you're cutting out, bro. Vishal, you're cutting out. Not sure if it's your connection.
Sounds fine to me.
There are a set of stipulations in the treaty, but they're very, very generic. And you could put pretty much any offense under there, again, as long as it is a crime in the Bahamas and the United States. So in this case, as long as the U.S. formally requests extradition, the likelihood that it's granted, I think, is extremely high. But it'll be up to the Bahamians on how quickly they process their own charges, which was in the letter, as somebody just read it earlier, but it's in the letter as well that they plan to process charges on their own as well. So as long as the U.S.
It's worth pointing out, right, that they would not have initiated the extradition if there wasn't a phone call from the United States. So they are just preparing for it. It's, obviously still being drafted. So I would expect that to happen within the next day.
Yeah,
and
my life meant to the point of whether it's accepted or not.
They had to put a case together. It had to take some time for them to build this case before they were going to do it. Even though everybody was screaming it early on, they did what they were supposed to do and followed their rules and regs and put the case together, and that's when they made the call.
I don't think it was as much about building a case against Sam Bankman, though, because I heard those claims initially as well. People brought up Enron and it brought up other financial collapse, and they allude to the fact that, like, hey, for a year's period of time or sometimes longer, no one was charged. And a lot of times what it is they're just looking for other people to implicate. It's not so much that they're building a case against the primary target. Like, Sam was an easy person to build a case against.
Yeah, it's more towards FTX and Alameda, right? It's more a case between both of those.
I think it's more so to see who else was compliant and knowledgeable about the activities that were happening. And there were definitely other people. It's impossible to move the amount of money he moved without other people knowing about it and being complicit. And that's, I guess, U.S. authorities
Before I give, I'll give you Alexandra. Just want to say quickly one thing, and I'll give the mic to Alexandra. For anyone listening, tomorrow we have Mark Andreessen coming on the show. So I've pinned it above. It's pinned on my space as well. If you want to listen to Mark Andreessen, make sure you join us tomorrow. You set your reminders. Also, my team is checking now. All my team is awake, so they're checking all news outlets. As soon as we have more information on, hopefully we hear Caroline getting arrested as well in the next few minutes. That would make my day. It'd be a good way to end the day. But yeah, so they're watching all news outlets, all sources. But if you are requesting to speak and we're not bringing you up, make sure you DM me, tell me why you want to speak and what you want to bring to the table so the team can check it, because there's too many requests and I can't go through them. Twitter Spaces glitches. Alexandra, you were saying something?
Yes. So first I pinned, I posted to the comments, like the purple thing at the bottom. I posted to the comments the extradition procedures. If you guys want to understand them, what's really interesting there is a provision for kidnapping somebody to bring them to the U.S. It's very interesting. Lures and stuff like that are discussed. It's very easy to read, but you can look at the procedure and see exactly what has to happen or had to happen for extradition to happen. The next thing is, I don't even think it's individuals. It's not just this group of 10. I think they're looking at whether or not Justin Sun is implicated in Tron, and those are major companies that are involved in Tron. It's like Panasonic and other ones. It's a bunch of enormous companies, and if that was implicated somehow in what FTX was doing, and I think they're probably also looking at Binance. There was a story today.
There's a bit of breaking news here from the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is, that's basically the most powerful district in the United States when it comes to these kinds of legal proceedings due to their proximity to Wall Street. So they tweeted, U.S. Damian Williams, that's the Attorney General, or not Attorney General, sorry, the attorney that's responsible for this, the U.S. Attorney. He said, earlier this evening, Bahamian authorities arrested Samuel Bankman-Fried at the request of the U.S. government, based on a seal indictment filed by the SDNY, that's the Southern District of New York. We expect to move to unseal the indictment in the morning, and we'll have more to say at that time. So this was initiated at the behest of the SDNY, the U.S. authorities, and they have the jurisdiction to do so. So he is in a lot of trouble.
I wonder if Caroline was in New York and rolled over on him.
Possibly.
Behind closed doors.
Their home base, though, I believe, is in Florida. So it will be interesting to see where they got New York from, because, for example, the class action suit is in Florida. It takes place in Florida. Because...
Oh, I know, but this is basically okay. So what happens is SDNY has, for all intents and purposes, the most resources when it comes to U.S. attorneys. So what normally happens is when there's a big case like this and it's financial fraud, usually the smaller courts, like the ones in
It was
Florida and
Ian
so on.
Choppy. Just want to know if it's me.
It's you. It's you.
It's
It's not
you.
Yeah,
Chopsticks.
It's
sounds
you,
Oh,
like
okay.
Mario.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Ian. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So what normally happens is that when you have a big case like this, the SDNY will usually step in and say, "Hey, we can handle it. We've got the resources. We've got the manpower. We've got hundreds of people working for us, so we can handle the case." And that will usually be where they hold a case. This is
But
the
that's
same
see,
thing that happened to
they don't get to.
Epstein
No,
and
wait,
Ghislaine
wait, one
Maxwell.
second. Oh, I'm sorry. They don't actually get to pick, right? You have to actually have jurisdiction over the matter, both the race and in-person jurisdiction, right? So there's still requirements
Usually, yeah, and so they
that there be
fill the
some
requirements.
nexus.
Yeah, they fill the requirements here. They
Well,
wouldn't be doing
but
this
that's what I
otherwise.
want to. That's what I want to know is what is that fulfilling? Because right now, when the class action took place, I was a little surprised that Florida was the place that was selected. Maybe it is for that particular type. The courts are a little more generous, but it doesn't really matter for federal court, right?
Right.
So
It doesn't matter.
for this federal case, you can't pick your jurisdiction like that, right? Like that's why BlockFi was done by the New Jersey district or state U.S. attorney for New Jersey because it was based in New Jersey. So I don't know that they have like the only nexus that I knew of was their relationship with Gemini, which is in New York. So I'd be interested to know what that was.
I have a prediction. I think Caroline, when she was in New York last week, spoke with somebody, rolled over on them for a better deal.
Yeah, we made that assumption.
Probably
Right,
broke
but
a
that's
deal,
that's not sufficient though. Remember, we still have legal obligations so that it could be put into a particular venue. So we can't just say, well, this one has the harshest penalties, or this one has the ones with the most resources to do it. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to do it according to where the most representative nexus is, and then if somebody wants a different one, then you have to file a change of venue or FNC, like a forum non-convenience, and then you get it relocated, but there's no relocation.
Ultimately he could be extradited from New York down to Florida.
I'd be very surprised.
Cases, right? It doesn't really matter as long as the SDNY has jurisdiction over this, because this is financial fraud, and it's very likely related to the SEC.
But that's also not New York, right? None of those are New York nexus. So it's not like New York has the rulings for financial fraud or anything financial, or New York has anything related to the SEC. The SEC isn't based in New York, so it has to be something specific that they have a way to capture them in New York. And I don't know that they had a base in New York. That's not where they're incorporated, as far as I'm aware. That's not where they have their base. So I'm interested to find out what that is, because none of this right now is actually the reason it gets captured, and we won't know until the official complaint is issued. So we can see there's a section in there that says venue and jurisdiction.
It'll be tomorrow morning where they release the unsealed indictment.
Right. So when we see that, we'll be able to see it. But that is what I'm saying is that, the indictment alone is not going to say jurisdiction. The complaint will actually say jurisdiction and choice of venue. And that's what we're going to be looking for.
I want to give Cherry, I know your hand is up. I just want to give an overview for the audience of, I think we talked about Justin Sun and others around. So what we're going to see over the next few days, weeks, and months is others get arrested around Sam. And we're going to see how deep this is going to go. For example,
is there something official with Justin Sun, or is that just speculation?
No. This is I was gonna say. So for example, Justin Sun and Kevin O'Leary, I highly doubt they're gonna face any criminal action. I don't think they did anything, intentionally did anything illegal or anything wrong. But to give you an idea of one of the speculative things that was made, again, that's speculation, but I'm mentioning it because the guys that made it have looked deeply into everything, and there were some of the people that called out a lot of things before they became known. So I think it's worth mentioning. But for example, Sam was working on a liquidity pool among his exchange, and Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you were there for that space, and Alex, you were there as well, I think. So he was creating a liquidity pool among, which is nothing wrong with that, but he was creating a liquidity pool among FTX and Justin Huobi, I think.
Can we get Wall Street Silver up here?
Yeah, sure. I didn't see him. So
we
between
need more space. Yeah, we need to remove somebody.
Yeah. I'll sort it out in a sec.
I'll step down. I appreciate you guys having me. Of course, this has been great. Let's go. Get that guy in jail. Get him back to the U.S.
I know Justin bought Poloniex, and Poloniex was fined by the SEC and settled. And Poloniex was one of the first crypto-to-crypto exchanges, real old-school one.
I want to, Simon, I want to actually, right after I just finish what I'm saying, and then we get Wall Street Silver's thoughts on this. I want to get your thoughts and Alex's thoughts about the concerns around Binance. I was going to discuss it in Thursday's show, but we can bring it up now. So just what I was saying is that liquidity pool is being created between Sam, FTX, and Justin Sunswabi. This is all speculation, by the way, everyone, and there's nothing wrong. Exchanges do this all the time. But I'm just saying that Sam and Kevin O'Leary's exchanges, and it's all part of the thread, who's going to take care of which jurisdictions. Now, why am I saying this? Unrelated to Sam getting arrested, all I'm saying is that Sam, as we saw with the block, and we saw multiple examples over the last few months, there was just, Alameda was doing just so much shit. Now, some of it will just be dragging people into their mess, like the block and their CEO, which the block did nothing wrong, at least not from what we know now. Others might have been more involved than what we know at the moment. So we may see more arrests and more investigations over the next few weeks and months. So that's the point I wanted to make. And I saw Kevin O'Leary's name mentioned a few times. Again, I'm not implying Kevin intentionally did anything wrong.
Okay, we got Wall Street Silver in here. You want to speak? Yeah, I think it'd be good to have your input.
I'm sorry, I missed everything you guys were talking about before. I just saw the spaces going and joined it.
Sam's arrested, bro. Sam's arrested.
Yeah.
They're still, the world is fair in some ways. There's still justice in the system.
You know, Jim Iorio and I had a bet just that we made a few days ago for 1 ounce American silver eagle coin, and I think I'm going to win now because he didn't think this would ever happen. So, hey, I just made 1 ounce of silver on this.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thierry?
Yeah, well, thank you, guys. First of all, I'm going to issue a little disclaimer that whatever I say is with a grain of salt and it's pure humor. But when it comes to the biggest jail tard or that is deserved between the orgy of criminals that was in the Bahamas, I don't think like the biggest one was.
I'm just sorry. I'm just going to give you the mic in a sec, Thierry. The whistleblower is talking about Hussein is going to join the space. So the person that was that we did the space with last time, probably one of the biggest investigations into FTX before the implosion. I'm really happy he accepted to come on the space again because he said he's going to take a break from all this mess. So awesome. He'll be coming in shortly. But yes, so you were saying something, Thierry?
Yeah, so I think Alameda basically and Caroline probably deserve the biggest jail tard because when you look at the activities, it seems like the one that was doing the most reckless behavior was pretty much Alameda. So I don't really know what that coffee was about in New York, because you would think of the two, the one that was more likely to get locked up because they were hanging around a jurisdiction where they could get locked up is Caroline, right? So why was she free is a bigger question than why was he free, because he had the benefit of the doubt of being in Bahamas and maybe it takes some time for you to lock him up. But for her to be over there, I mean, you know, for me, it's a little bit more flagrant than that. So it sounds like whatever happened there was probably like a deal, maybe not to just, you know, not a get out of jail free card, but definitely something that would she was definitely better advised and she acted better. She wasn't like screaming all over the place that, you know, she's sorry or something, which is definitely incriminating. I think
it seems they both
a little bit better than SBF for sure.
Yeah, it seems they both acted in the right way. So if you trace the story, so SBF knew that Caroline had said that he knew that client funds were being used. So SBF would then follow what's the best path, given that, you know, we're pitted against each other. Well, the best path is to play dumb so that I get done for the equivalent. I don't know what the right word is if there's any lawyers, but the equivalent of homicide instead of murder, whatever that relates to financial crime. and then stay in Bahamas, so extradition offers some additional protection. So given the scenario, it seems like everything was the right strategic move based upon what everyone's saying today, because it was either, once Caroline had made that first move, then he seemed to have known his fate. And I don't believe there's any separation between Alameda and FTX. That's all BS. This was one entity.
Just really quickly, the distinction. Just very quickly, just the distinction between manslaughter and homicide and financial crimes is really going to be the civil fraud and financial crime segment versus the criminal segment. They're very different. They can be brought together, but if you move one into the civil area, then it's really just about fines. But if you move it into the criminal area, then obviously we're talking, something significantly more severe. I don't know that he would survive jail time, to be honest. I mean, if it's not like Club Fed, I don't think he would.
I'll go to Wall Street Silver, and then we got Hussein on stage, which I'm really grateful for. Wall Street Silver, go ahead, man.
Well, once it's in the federal system, the length of the sentence is often judged by the size of the financial crime. And because that's why Bernie Madoff ended up with 150 plus years. The size of the amount of money is critical in the length of the sentencing. And with the numbers they're throwing around, 8 to 10 billion for FTX, Sam's looking at a similar 100 plus year sentence here.
Can you remember how much was Bernie?
Bernie was 150 years, and he was
how much dollars?
Oh, he was 15 or 16 billion. But if you look at the actual
pretty close.
If you look at the actual Ponzi number of what the fake number of what he said people had been making, that was at 60 billion. But the real dollars that actually went into the Ponzi was, I want to say 16 billion or in that area. But the key thing here is it wasn't just SBF. I just did a tweet about this. It was also Gary Wang. His wife Constance Wangs was the COO. Caroline, we all know. Sam Trabucco was the co-CEO of Alameda, who just resigned a few months ago. And I think a lot of people would like to know, did he see the writing on the wall 3 months earlier and bailed out 3 months earlier, hoping to dodge this?
Hussein, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I will jump in. Now, I wasn't going to do any more spaces about FTX. The numbers are much higher. I know you guys are thinking it's 8 to 10 billion. The numbers, when they go into full investigation, they start looking at when he cashed out the crypto, the customer's crypto, sold it out, and all the funds that he brought in. Which we've got data that puts it up to 26 billion, and that's not even, we believe, not even half the data out there. There's a lot of companies, a lot of investments, and a lot of money he put in that we know about.
Your mic's a little choppy.
Yeah, Hussein, your mic is a bit choppy, man. If you can, and we can hear a bit of feedback on your end. Maybe I'll let Orbis speak quickly, and then so you can fix your mic, and I'll give you the mic again because I know you'll probably have a lot to say.
I'll jump off and jump back on, so it might be. It's sometimes it happens with the connection when I join you guys. So let me jump on and we'll start jumping back on.
Perfect. Orbis?
Turn off your notifications so you don't get kicked out.
Yeah, I'll tell him.
Someone sends
He got. Yeah, I'll tell him as well.
It's because he speaks so fast it breaks the mic.
All right, so Mario and everyone on the stage. I was just looking at Bernie Madoff. I think it was 150 years, right? And his sons were also convicted at that time. But I believe, if I'm not wrong, didn't both of his sons also die in jail? I'm not sure. And obviously,
Bernie
One
Madoff's
committed
brother
suicide.
was convicted.
One committed suicide.
Bernie Madoff's brother was convicted. One of his sons committed suicide, and the sons were mostly innocent. The sons were just running the norm. There were two businesses that Bernie Madoff had. One was a completely normal, brokerage business. It was the money management business that was the Ponzi. The two sons actually turned in Bernie Madoff, their father, when their father, Bernie, confessed to them that, it was all over. The two sons the next day went to the FBI and turned their own father in. So the two sons were, their lives were destroyed by this, but they did the right thing. So I don't want anyone to, at least that's everything I read about it. They were never charged. Bernie Madoff's brother was part of the scam and was convicted. And I think he also died in jail.
But Madoff was charged with like 11. I mean, he pled guilty to like 11 counts. I mean, securities fraud, wire fraud, perjury, money laundering, mail fraud, right? So it's like with Sam, it's not just going to be one charge, obviously, right? I mean, federal wire fraud alone, right? Just federal wire fraud. That carries a 20-year maximum sentence. And if you involve any financial institutions, that can go up to 30 years. If you add aggravating factors, you can talk about 35, 40 years for federal wire fraud alone, not to mention the numerous other crimes he's committed. And so I don't think it's a question. He's likely to go to prison for life, I think, if they do take it that far. But I don't know. I mean, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, it would actually be better than what happened to Ross, right? The guy who created social the social platform for e-commerce back in 2000s, and he was arrested for creating an anonymous social platform where people could come and sell, and he wasn't even part of any of the illegal activities, and yet he was sentenced to double life prison.
He was arrested
and
for also
sentenced to
soliciting
double life.
He was arrested for some soliciting for murder and a few other things. It wasn't just creating a website. So, I mean, I know the urban legend was he
charged with any of the illegal crimes, though.
Yeah.
So I want to go to Hussein, if you don't mind, guys. Hussein, are you with us?
Mario, I just wanted to. I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask two questions quickly.
Sure, go ahead.
And those questions were, looking at the extradition treaty. There's the one case in which the extradition request might not go through is if they determine that the extradition is politically motivated. So I wanted to just ask the experts over here, with all the big names being pulled on, is there a chance that the investigation might go this route? And the reason I'm bringing up all of these questions is because, again, guys, like almost 10 days back, I had heard that, they are waiting, Joe and Barbara, they're waiting for SBF to be extradited. And so I'm trying to think that, what could be the loopholes that are being exploited at this time. And the second question I had was, is there any scenario in which I know Vishal spoke about situations where, between US and Bahamas, if the crime is similar in nature, the person would still be extradited to US. But is there any scenario in which the trial could happen in Bahamas, especially looking at one of the looking at one of the precedences of another case where they had made an argument that we will not get justice in US, and so we want Bahamas to take over our case. So, Vishal.
Yeah, I can read you the exact clauses. So it's the political motivation thing about offenses is pretty straightforward. In this case, I don't think it would apply, but I can read you exactly what it says in the extradition treaty. It says, for political and military offenses, extradition shall not be granted when A, the offense for which extradition is requested is an offense of a political character, in which case I don't think it is. Even if you can make the argument that there is some political motivation behind it, the offense itself is not of a political character. And so I think that's the exception you're referring to. But anyways, B, the executive authority of the requested state determines that the request was made for the purpose of prosecuting or punishing the person for an offense of, again, a political character. C, the executive authority of the requested state determines that the request was politically or racially motivated, which again, in this case, I don't think applies. And then number two, for the purpose of this treaty, the following offenses shall not be considered to be offenses of a political character. A, murder. B, offense with respect to which contracting state has the obligation to prosecute or grant extradition other than by means of a multilateral treaty, convention, or other international agreement. And then lastly, the executive authority of the requested state may refuse extradition for offenses under military law, which are not offenses under normal criminal law. So again, not a political
are we still
character.
discussing whether the extradition is going to happen? The Bahamas said it would, and the SDNY is not going to drop this without extradition already in the bag.
No, I agree with you. I was just addressing her concerns about any
useful, but definitely useful to have those primary sources. But this is a fait accompli as far as extradition goes. We don't need to worry about that.
I agree. I was just addressing her concerns.
And we'll go
just as a heads up, John Ray is going to be speaking about this tonight. I don't have a time, but it was just released in the Financial Times.
Oh, perfect. We have Meta Lawman. Anything to add before I give the mic to Charles Hoskinson and Hussein? Meta Lawman, are you there? All right, Charles, how are you?
Good to see you guys. This is some breaking news, huh?
It is. Like last time you were here, we were just witnessing the implosion live on stage, and we're hoping. And then we started losing hope in whether Sam would get arrested, and then we see this. Not sure. Actually, I'm gonna surprise you, Charles. You're gonna enjoy this. You weren't there for the last space we did, and I wanna give the mic to Hussein, Charles, because I invited him back. He said he'll never do an FTX space again. So before I get your thoughts on this, I want Hussein to give us an idea, because Hussein has been investigating FTX for 9 months or so, and he's got a lot of insight into how deep this goes. And I think, Charles, you'll find this really interesting. So Hussein, I want to give you the mic to tell us, hopefully your mic works this time, Hussein. Give us an idea for anyone that missed the space we did last time, very briefly. I know there's a lot of things that you discussed, but how deep does this go? How many more people are involved, and what do you expect to see in the next few months? Because you've spent a lot of time investigating FTX and Alameda.
I hope you can hear me much better now. I'm sitting down. Yeah, I was just having lunch when you tagged me in. Look, the situation is much bigger than most people are contemplating. I mean, even in terms of the money. I know you guys are looking at 8 to 10 billion, but that's not even a drop of water. I mean, it's what we're looking at right now is just from basic info we have is 26 to 50 billion dollars. Right, so you've got different types of funds that they accumulated. Now, what you're talking about is different between customer funds, investment funds, and capital they raised for other projects. So when you combine the three amounts together, you're actually sitting on above 26 to 27 billion dollars. So just to give you a quiet insight, initially when we started this investigation and we started speaking and we put all the data together, we thought that this Ponzi, this whole scheme, was sitting above $50 billion. We haven't seen where the 50 billion is yet. I mean, I know people told us, and we spoke to people, we put their data together, but we couldn't prove it. What we were able to prove that there's now over $26 billion, which went through the hands of Alameda and FTX. So it's a lot bigger than the numbers that you guys are discussing. Now, in terms of, and what I loved about this space, and the only reason why I jumped on, is now you guys are asking the right questions. You get Singh, you get Gary, what's his name? The CTO, Gary Wong, you grab those two, you'll find the money. So the system, the guys who looked after the things for FTX, you got to look at Alameda. The money was being shifted by a few people. Now, we know that Sam took a loan of $3.3 billion. Now, what you guys haven't seen yet is what Caroline took, what Gary took, and what the other guys involved took. Now, even Dan Friedberg, I mean, you don't give your Nishad Singh $500 million plus, and you don't give the rest of them. So these guys were siphoning money out. The information that we have that they all took large sums of money. So whoever thinks they have no money, they've got a lot of money. Whoever thinks all the money is gone, all the money isn't gone. It's too big of a numbers. These guys have just very well moved the money, and just nobody knows where the funds are. But once you start tracing the funds, I'm pretty sure you'll see there's probably about 26 billion plus in initial investment that they had in their hands, and you'll find that the money trail, you need Singh. We've said it from day one. I don't know if Mario, you remember. You want these guys, go after Singh. Get Nishad Singh. No one's gone after him yet. All right, grab Nishad Singh.
Can you tell us who? Can you tell the audience who that is?
So okay. I'm going to tell you from our perspective of my company how things operate and why I'm
before actually, Hussein, just 2 seconds. I know we have breaking. Alexander, you have something to share before we give the mic back to Hussein?
Yeah, John Ray's statement is out. If you want to see that, this is what he says. So he just this is before the why is this not here? It is. This is before the after the arrest, but before the indictment comes out, which is apparently at 10 a.m. this morning. And I'm looking here. Hold on 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Here, I pinned it.
So I'll let you prepare. Yeah, I'll let you. Are you ready to read it out, or John? John, give the mic back to Hussein first. I'll let you prepare. Give you a couple of minutes. Yeah, sure. All good. Hussein, do you want to continue? So you were saying Singh, catching Singh. Can you tell us more what you mean by that?
So Nishad is the guy who built it all. So the back end, and from what we've been told, even the back door, the entry to the system, everything to do with the system, Nishad knew the whole system back to front. So even though Sam or anyone says we couldn't code, you've got to go after the person who actually built it. Now the person that built it knows exactly how and what and where and how it operates. So everyone's left Nishad alone. And from day one, even from the day we first jumped on Mario's, we said grab Nishad. That's the guy, because this is the guy that actually developed. From everyone that we spoke to, Nishad is the one that developed the technology. So he's the one that enhanced and worked on the technology extensively, him and Gary. Now, SBF obviously is the architect and designs what he wants, and they develop it and build it. Now, you've got to follow the money. You know that Nishad has taken over $500 million in a loan, and when it's a loan, that means obviously that's money he's just taken. But so has Sam. Now, what you guys aren't looking at is the rest of the group. You don't give one party and not give the other party. We were told they were all siphoning money. Right? It wasn't just a single person. The whole group was taking large volumes of money. So from what we understand, they all have large volumes of money with them. And we aren't talking about a couple of $100 million each. We are talking about substantial amount of money, over $500 million each. We were told Dan Friedberg alone was in figures above Singh, much above Singh. So within the 1 billion plus. So again, these are speculation. We've never been able to prove it, and we don't have the resources to prove this stuff. But what we are saying is once they investigate and they realize the crime, so the crimes, see, they can get away with it if you don't realize what they did. Once you start looking at leverage positions, wiping out people's leverages and everything they committed, you can then trace what accounts got paid and where the money went. You know, we were told they were siphoning money through FTX. It was actually being utilized for money laundering. So the system itself, through leveraging, they were positioning, people to take advantage or, put them in a position, wiping out leveraging, and that's how that person got paid. So they were actually intentionally losing money. So Alameda Research wasn't losing money, unintentionally. They were actually losing money to siphon the funds. So this will lead.
We've got the all good, mate. All good. I'll let you continue because that's you got a lot of information to share based on the last space. We've got Nick joining as well, which is perfect. But Alexandra, you've got the statement from the new FTX CEO.
It was in the Financial Times that I don't have a subscription to, but it basically pulled out all of the like they show it the first time and then they cut it because you don't have a subscription. But
yeah, send me the link. Send me the link on WhatsApp and I'll open it up and then
go ahead and laugh, Charles. It's what happens, right? Like I'm looking at all the sources and I only were subscribed to like 10.
So what essentially wrote from you?
Mario's got ways of breaking the firewalls.
Yeah, what he has a statement from.
One second, I'll send it straight to you.
Doomberg.
Go ahead.
Out the statement. If anyone wants to read it, Doomberg just tweeted it.
Yeah, sure. Do you have it open? Do you want to read it out, Wall Street Silver?
It's kind of long, so I don't know if it's. I'll read it. While many things are unknown at this stage and many questions remain, we do know the following. First, customer assets from FTX were commingled with assets from Alameda trading platform. Second, Alameda used client funds to engage in margin trading, which exposed customer funds to massive losses. Third, the FTX group went on a spending binge from late 2021 through 2022, during which approximately $5 billion was spent buying a bunch of businesses and investments, many of which are worth only a fraction of what was paid for them. Fourth, loans and other payments were made to insiders in excess of $1 billion. Fifth, Alameda's business model as a market maker required deploying funds to various third-party exchanges, which were inherently unsafe and further exacerbated by the limited protections offered by certain foreign jurisdictions. So that's the limit of what has been copied and pasted on Twitter that I can see so far. One other thing I just wanted to mention.
Where can I see it? Where can you pin it above?
Doomberg just tweeted it. If anyone wants to.
Pretty much all of that is consistent with things that have been covered on here.
I was going to say the same.
If you click on the link that I pinned up there, you can actually see it there. So it's the whole the Financial Times thing. It apparently will work through there.
Okay.
But it says the first two things that it says are just talking about here. It's questions have been raised as to why all of the FTX group companies were included in the Chapter 11 filing, particularly FTX US. The answer is because FTX US was not operated independently of FTX.com. Chapter 11 protection was necessary both to avoid a run on the bank at FTX US and to allow our team the time to identify and protect its assets. Since the time of the filing, I've become even more confident this was the correct decision, as the books and records issued at the FTX US and many relationships between FTX US and the other FTX group companies become clearer. He continues, customer assets from FTX.com were commingled with assets from Alameda Trading Platform, and I think the rest was read. But I mean, there's supposed to be another statement coming at 10 a.m. tomorrow, I believe Eastern time, is when the Southern District of New York thing is supposed to be the unsealed, and I think that there's going to be a statement then actually also from John Ray.
Hey,
Alex,
Mario, do you mind if I
question.
interrupt for just a second? There's another kind of breaking news. It's related to the Twitter files, if you don't mind.
Oh shit! Yeah, of course. What happened there?
All right, so Eric Schmidt, if you're not familiar with him, he's the Attorney General of what is it, Missouri? Yeah. So he has sent a letter to Twitter based on the Twitter files, wanting to know James Baker's overall role into whether any key documents that were requested previously were deleted. So I just I just quote tweeted it. I'll put that in the at the top, and that's something worth looking into. So he says here, thanks to Elon Musk's Twitter files, we now know that James Baker had an outsized role in censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story at Twitter. Last week, we sent a letter to Twitter asking the platform to look into whether any key documents were deleted. Further, we asked Twitter to reveal who from the federal government communicated with Twitter to censor speech. Based on our current depositions, we believe the previous list we received pursuant to a third-party subpoena was incomplete. Lastly, we asked Twitter to provide responsive documents pursuant to our original third-party subpoena, and he links to the full letter requesting that Twitter release a bunch of information about all of the federal agents who were communicating with Twitter with regards to the censorship of users. And this is only known now, right? This is only allowed now. I'm not allowed, but only possible now because of the release of the Twitter files. So, don't count on the federal government to take action against these people. It is attorneys generals like Eric Schmidt who are going to be taking action here.
I appreciate you sharing this. For anyone that doesn't know, we've been covering the Twitter files live for
Mario,
the last few days and for the next few days.
I also add a funny little tag on to that? There was Musk went to David Chappelle's stand-up show yesterday in San Francisco, and he wasn't best received amongst the San Franciscan community. So there's a video of him apparently being booed quite a lot. But as you can tell, that's not the sentiment shared by everybody across the country. So it's quite a funny little anecdote there.
I want to go back to the files. So Hussein, the things that Wall Street Silver, if you can pin the tweet you were referring to as well. I just couldn't find it for some reason. It's on Bloomberg's Twitter account. Silver?
Doomberg. D-O-O.
Oh, Doomberg. Oh, shit. Okay. Doomberg T?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can see it, the little bird, the green bird. All right, I'm going to check it out now. Thanks for sharing that. I'll send it to my team so they can keep an eye out on it. But based on what you've read, and I'm going to read it now again, there it is. John Ray's testimony. While many things are unknown at this stage, and okay, so that's the testimony that Alexandra read. And is that what you are referring to as well, Silver?
Yes, I just read that verbatim from Doomberg's account.
Perfect, yeah. And many questions. We know the following. First, customer assets from FTX were commingled with assets from the Alameda. Okay, so essentially what we know already. He's confirming it all. But Hussein, I'll let you continue giving us an overview because I want to get Charles's thoughts after he hears you speak on all your findings. So first thing you mentioned is probably the biggest thing you mentioned is that there's a lot more money involved, and I'm trying to get your business partner up on stage. A lot more money involved, and you mentioned a number closer to 50 billion. And I've got a whole thread. I'm actually going to find the thread and I'm going to retweet it so everyone can have a look at it because we kind of summarized in that thread everything you said. So I'm going to find that thread and retweet it. But that was one of the main things. Then you mentioned that now we're going to, you talked about Singh. I forgot his first name. He is probably the key, him and others, Sam Trabucco as well, no, Gary Wong, the CTO, will be the key to find that money, because that money was not only funneled through Sam's parents, but also other executives and other employees at FTX and Alameda, and they all got property as well, and that's what your chain analysis showed as well. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, even with the property, sorry.
It was just Nishad. I was giving you a name.
Yeah, Nishad Singh. Yeah, even with the property, from its early days, we were told that it was about $500 million spent inside of the Bahamas, and they were buying property for a lot of people, including, I think, one of the guys from the block. Now, we didn't understand the significance. And Mario, if you actually look at the documents I sent you months ago, I mean, they're actually in that document. We just didn't even know who the block was. We don't come from a crypto industry. And then when everyone made a big deal about it, I just started looking, saying, okay, why is it such a big deal? Then I realized why it was such a big deal.
Sorry. Hussein, in your documents, you mentioned the payment to the block?
See, there's 60 million. So, when you look at the first document I sent you, if you download that document, you go to that link and you download it, you'll see that I know that there's a little bit difference. Obviously, we get inside information. It's not always perfect, right? But we had some. I actually thought the block was the TV block. I didn't even know what it was. So when we had it on there, we've got influencers, how much money was spent on influencers and how much money was spent on the block. If I'm correct, I don't have the file. I'm actually having lunch. But if I have the file in front of me, I think it was $60 million.
Jesus Christ. So for anyone, let me mute you again, Hussein, because I'm getting a lot of feedback from your end. So I'll mute you whenever you're not speaking. But essentially, just for anyone that's not taking, because when you first came on stage, man, we got, and that's in the early days, we got a lot of criticisms like, Mario, you're jumping to too many conclusions. But then one thing after another proved to be right. And you and Top Boy, the insider that had the account, Top Boy, that came in, you and him probably gave us the most insight into everything that the SBF has been doing. Now, what you're telling me is in the tough lad, and in the files that top lad, and in the files you were doing that you sent me, man, it's a pretty big data room, and you sent to the press as well, correct?
Yes, correct.
It shows in there that the payment that everyone's gone crazy about right now regarding the block is in those records. Is that what you're saying?
It is, but it's a lot more on our records. It says that overall there was, I think, 6.
He dropped out.
FYI, I just posted DB, just did another update, but they officially listed the different charges. So it was wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud conspiracy,
50 million.
money laundering.
So it says that there was
shit.
You're saying, I'm going to remove it. Hold on.
Yeah, so the statement that we read from
point I wanted to make about the. Oh wait, is somebody talking that I can't hear?
No. Not anymore. Go ahead, bro. Go good.
My bad. Because it looked like some people's mics were unmuted, but I couldn't hear anybody. But one more point I want to make on the Madoff comparison was that, initially prosecutors thought because Madoff claimed that he acted alone, that it would be difficult to implicate other people. But then it was his CFO. I forgot the guy's name. I don't know if anybody remembers his CFO's name, but he was like the star witness. And he pled guilty to 10 counts at that time. And that's really what opened the case up and what allowed other people to be arrested in the wake of the Madoff situation. So I think that's inevitably going to happen here because there were other people involved. I mean, there had to be. So that's really the next wave of what comes. And people who are saying like Sam's going to like flip on a bunch of people, like maybe, but I'm not sure if he's going to be the key to opening it up or if it's going to be other people just looking for a plea deal.
It was Frank DePascali was the CFO for Bernie Madoff
that was his name. There you go.
Yeah.
My bad.
And what you just what you said, SBF is the key at the top, but I guarantee you one of the other 5 beneath him is the feds always want one insider who's just going to sing like a bird, all right, who will just point the fingers and will have credibility, and they'll give that one person they'll give that one person, they're just going to charge them with 1 count and give them a minimum sentence, and then everyone else is going to fry. So the race is on right now among the 6 key people who can cut a deal first with the feds, because that's the person who's going to get the good deal, and everyone else is going to fry for 20 years to life in this deal. And unless I think that one Indian guy's already back in India. Who was it, Nishad or someone? Unless I think he's already fled back to India, and hope I guess he's hoping that they won't extradite him back. But the rest of them are all going to probably fry, or not fry. They're not going to die.
Sorry, guys, just because I got to quickly leave. Please, I apologise for butting in. I just got a meeting and I've got to jump in, but I can come back later. If they get Nishad, they'll have everything they need. Really, that's the guy they need. I know he's in India. They need to bring him back. They need to question him. He's the guy that knows everything inside the system and knows. I mean, when we're talking about the way they were washing money and trading money in the system, he's the one that developed all the protocols for it. So you really need to bring Nishad back.
And I just want to say, before you jump off to your meeting, and make sure you jump back on, I've invited your business partner, Nick. I've just DM'd him the invite now. But I just want to say to you, so the number that you had the block, because the block, all of crypto was up in arms for the last few days when they found out about the payment to the block by SBF. But you knew this.
We had that they gave them 60 million. They gave them a 4 million. Look, the file's not in front of me, and there's a lot of data. But I remember there was a cash payment. So we were told there was a certain cash payment given. There was a property in the Bahamas.
Hussein, just before you continue, I don't understand. You had this information. Who have you shared this information with other than us? The press, you said, yeah?
I've given it to heaps of reporters. I've given it to heaps of people. Anyone that asks for it has it. And the Dropbox is a live Dropbox. So what happens in the link, every time we update it, every time something happens, everyone can get the updated details. So it's
do you mind if I make it public?
Let me create a specific folder for you to make public. There's a lot of things there we don't want to go public yet.
Do that, man. Do a folder. I want to make it public because if you've shared the block story with all these reporters and they haven't covered it, and now, because this is pretty serious.
Honestly, so we don't lie to you. We didn't know what the block even was. It was just another thing on the
reporters. But if it was in there, reporters should know what it is. Anyone in the crypto space should know who it is.
Yeah, from us, we just had them as one of the influencers that got paid money. It was either 50 or 60 million in total. But that's all we had them as. We didn't even know who the block was or who's a part of the blocks. But it was another part of the list of money they spent.
Okay, based on this alone, for anyone listening, I've just retweeted the thread summarizing everything from the space we did with Hussein. I think we should start finally taking everything that Hussein and Nick said in that space and in their data room that I'll make public when Hussein gives me the link and gives me permission, should take it very seriously. And any reporters that are listening, I think if you did look into the data room properly, you would have covered those stories, you would have broken that story early before anyone else, including especially the story about the block.
Mario, everything you guys are hearing now, if you go speak to CNBC or NBC News or any of the ones we worked with, us and Ben, which is BitBoy, they already had all this evidence that you guys are now discussing. And we had told them the full stories about Dan, about seeing. We even told them about the hack before the hack happened. It's just nobody reported anything. So even the close reporters we worked with, we gave them so much information, but I think they found it very hard to believe. It wasn't until after the fact that they came back to us and said, shit, it actually did happen. But we actually had all the inside information early days, but even we didn't know what was real or not. I mean, let's be honest. We had all this data given to us by so many people. We had to go through them and try to figure out what was real, what wasn't real. And there's limited amount of information to verify what was real or not. But if the ones we did verify, like Singh, right, the hack, all of these were verified through people who we know are credible. And these were why we told the reporters that all of this is credible. These guys told us everything they've said is 100% correct. They've never told us one thing that's been outside of being absolutely perfect data. And we gave them everything. We gave them everything on, before the collapse of FTX, during the collapse of FTX, and after the collapse of FTX. There's nothing that's out on the market now or out on news channels that these reporters didn't have access to much earlier than everyone else.
And I'm just doing a tweet to give you a big shout out and kind of bring awareness to that thread. But you also said, and it's in that thread, that the hack, for anyone listening, you remember how FTX was hacked in the Bahamas and we saw all that money come out. And they also said that the app should be uninstalled because there's malware on the app. Well, the point that Hussein is making, or made in that space we did last week, he's like, guys, that's not the case. The reason they wanted the app uninstalled is because they were wiping data. And that hack, while they took the money, and he's saying it's an inside job, while they took the money, that hack was essentially a distraction as they continue wiping data.
It was also a little bit earlier than that. We actually believe that it happened from the day they even approached CZ. So it was they were actually planning. They knew they were about to fall. They knew everything was going to be uncovered. So we believe it started on very early. We believe they did the hack when JJ took over, so they can actually say that they had nothing to do with it. They weren't they weren't the CEO at the time, and they weren't in charge. And that's why it was planned when they left, and he basically took over, and the bankruptcy went there. I mean, come on, guys. If someone's hacking a system, do you hack the system when it's got heaps of money, or do you wait until there's no more money in it? So there was, from day one, that whole hack was just about destroying data and, obviously shifting. And that's why you see a lot of people straight away started saying that their wallets had no more balances in there. I mean, even right now the servers are down, but you'll find that when the servers come back up, you're going to get heaps of complaints about people saying that we don't actually have data. Now, this brings to the enterprise accounts. Everything else we were told was true. So I think the enterprise accounts is also true. The enterprise account is the way they were actually getting around KYC and having a secondary market on FTX utilized by traders who would have, anything from drug money to cartel money to whatever it is. I mean, that's the only thing that's left over at everything we were told that we haven't been able to prove. Everything else has been 100% spot on. So if everything else is correct, I would suggest that the enterprise accounts is what they would be deleting, and people should start looking into the system of how they ran their enterprise accounts. Having someone with one KYC issue sub accounts to other people, and they were utilizing that as a secondary exchange in other regions to bring volumes, but also to bring black money into the system.
Jesus, man. I'm going to retweet it. I'm going to do a tweet again to bring awareness to everything guys shared.
But I really have to go. I'm running very late. Cancel too many appointments these last 2 weeks. I'll jump back after
the meeting. Yeah, come back after the meeting.
See you later, guys. Thank you.
Charles, what do you think, man?
I mean, it's a hell of a story. I listened to CoffeeZilla's interview on the Lex Friedman podcast, and I've been getting reports every other day about various things in the SBF scandal. I didn't expect him to get arrested this quickly. Generally speaking, when you look at what's happened here, this is not a normal financial crimes investigation. Usually if there's like a rogue trading desk at Chase or Goldman Sachs or something like that, you have a highly regulated structure with good corporate controls, good record keeping, and then you kind of have a little dark area where something happened. And it's not too hard to reconstruct history. When you look at how SBF ran his shop, it's almost like how a mafia unit would run their shop. And so this looks a lot more like a RICO investigation, which is basically what you would do to go after a mafia type organization where there's limited records and you have to systematically reconstruct things from scratch. Now, the DOJ and the IRS, through something called the CID, they both have very sophisticated forensic accounting groups who have that capacity. And what they do is they kind of climb the ladder. So they walk their way through of anybody who worked there, who was in a position to know, anybody who had records, and slowly pull the pieces back together. Given that this arrest happened so soon, because that reconstruction is painstaking and it takes quite a bit of time, it's likely there was an investigation into FTX prior to the collapse. That's the first thing there. The second thing is I suspect that there's a parallel investigation the U.S. government is conducting looking into the Bahamas itself, because there might be some incidents of corruption there. There's probably going to be another referral. There's a special group within the DOJ that looks into political corruption. That's where Jack Smith worked, the special counsel that was just appointed to look at Trump. And he investigated Edwards, the former VP candidate, and a bunch of Republicans and others. So there's likely going to be some referral there too, given that there was a humongous amount of political donations that got washed through. And there's usually some form of an FEC issue in addition to perhaps other things that are more nefarious. More likely than not, the entire corporate structure is going to get collapsed into the United States. There's 133 companies, they're all around the world, but it's going to get swept up because there's a substantive U.S. concern to this affair. And the charges that they'll hit them with are going to be done in layers and waves. So you think like wire fraud, bank fraud, even if it's just a few charges, they could carry very long sentences, decades. And collectively, this could put them in jail 20, 30 years just with that initial set. But I suspect that they have insiders who have already provided some form of information to assist the investigation, and that this is something that's been ongoing for probably greater than 6 to 9 months. In terms of the scale of it, $50 billion, it's pretty amazing, when you think about it. There tends to be amplification when you're lending to yourself and you're creating tokens out of thin air and you're playing accounting schemes where you can make numbers look larger and then you can leverage those in a certain way. And if you bet right, you make a windfall. If you bet wrong, it completely wipes you out. So it would be surprising to me that he was able to aggregate that many assets unless he was able to pilfer a ton of deposits. But it very well could have happened. I mean, the crypto markets at one point were worth $2.6 trillion at the height of last year. At the beginning of this year, it was still $2.2 trillion. So there was a lot of book value there. It's an open question about the fiat. There's no question that there was structuring and layering with respect to money laundering. He had bought stuff from his parents, and a lot of people in his inner circle were getting big payoffs. And actually, the most interesting thing was the block. And this was something that we all suspected, the Layer 1 community, because there were certain cryptocurrencies like Ripple, Cardano, others, and we just get brutalized in the media. And we were always wondering, why does the block hate us? I mean, we've never done anything to these guys. And then we find out, Solana is kind of SBF's little thing, and anything that competes with it or is a challenge to it, let's go ahead and throw some money at the media to write negative articles. What's more interesting is the lack of desire by the mainstream media to write about SBF. And actually, as they do the forensic accounting, there might be some very, very uncomfortable and inconvenient financial connections between SBF and mainstream media. Not necessarily to the extent of what we saw with the block, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if a few $1 million went here or there. And that's why they covered for him as long as they could and buried as long as they could. But this is a very challenging investigation because it's like a RICO case. There's going to be forensic accounting up the wazoo. It's a political case because it involves multiple jurisdictions and political donations. There was a flow of money from FTX into Ukraine. And there's a lot of factors here that are going to make things very challenging. The other thing is SBF made it incredibly easy for him to be prosecuted because he just went and talked to people. And he said a ton of things that are now in the public domain that are probably admissible that tools, techniques, and people who literally this is all they do for a living at DOJ and IRS and other parts of the federal bureaucracy of the United States who are incredibly good at reconstructing records and following money. And then they're going to be able to kind of rope things off. And actually, IRS in particular has a lot of sophisticated crypto tools that they license from Chainalysis and other firms. And they use those tools to basically track for tax evasion and money laundering. So it's very likely that domain expertise is going to be brought in. And they're going to kind of reconcile the blockchain records that exist with the inflows and outflows. And they know how to do that at this point. It's something that they have a lot of knowledge for. I suspect that if SBF gets arrested, as he's been arrested, there's probably going to be another wave of arrests that happen in another week or two. It's hard to say how many. And there's just a question of how many people have already fled to extradition countries or not. The frustrating thing is this thing is going to drag on for a long time. The fact that they move so quickly this early in is also probably an indication that they were worried about a flight risk, where they were thinking that there was a good probability that he was going to skip town and go to a place that was hard to get him, or just disappear, or maybe somebody would kill him. And so they said, well, we got to get him in U.S. custody and get him somewhere where we can sit on him for a bit, and then they can slow everything down to a grinding halt. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a trial postponed until 2024. It may actually take that long. If you guys remember Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, between when the Wall Street Journal broke the story and the company fell apart to when she went to trial, it was quite a bit of time. And there she pretty obvious and straightforward. Here's a situation where to make things admissible in court, everything is going to require meticulous work and a chain of evidence and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was very clear that he was trying to destroy some evidence too. They were using Signal with disappearing messages to communicate with each other. And it may be possible with forensics to still recover some of those messages depending upon exactly what they did. And that's why it looks a lot more like a RICO investigation, because that's what you would expect from a criminal enterprise, like a drug cartel or an arms trafficker or something like that, where they have enough operational security to have good ComSec, and they always ensure that those aren't admissible. So they got a long road ahead. He's got a long road ahead. The scale of this, he's probably looking at what Madoff got. I think it was more than 50 years. So I don't think he's ever going to see the outside of a prison cell unless he's a really old man or he's got some incredible political dirt.
Well, Madoff got 150 years, and he was already in his 70s. I mean, this guy, what's his name? Sam's only 30 years old. I mean, he'll be doing 50 years of living still in prison. He's probably mentally just collapsing right now because he's sort of realizing, he's never going to play League of Legends ever again.
It's so weird. I can't hear half of you guys. I can hear some of you, but I can't hear the others.
It happens. It sometimes glitches, it's Charles. So what you can do if you want, you can drop down and drop back up, and you'll hear them, or just wait, and it should work afterwards. It's whatever you prefer. I'll just want to say one thing to add on to Charles, and then add on to what Wall Street Silver mentioned. Charles, I'll send you also my WhatsApp, so you can actually DM me whenever you want to jump back in the space you're facing difficulties.
It'd be great to have on. I mean, he's the guy who made Cardano, and I own a lot of it.
He was there. Charles was there. We had literally everybody from the space, all the leaders there, like witnessing the implosion live from the space, from everyone from Gabe and regulators to CZ and Jesse from Kraken and Charles and the founder of Polygon. I always forget his name. So it was a fascinating time. But I just want to add on to what Charles said. There was a group that what's his name? Sam created. A secret group. Does anyone remember the name? Let me see. I had it open just now.
Wire fraud.
Wire fraud. So Charles, they literally had a group called like all the executives, and that group was called Wire Fraud. I don't know if it was on Signal.
Oh, you've got to be fucking.
FTX and SBF. Several of them do have RICO causes of action. RICO causes of action, that the Racketeering Act usually has a collection of innocent acts that are combined together to make a criminal act. It's actually very difficult to diplomatic, not criminal means. And then the last thing is that Sam Trabucco looks like he's the connection between Tether, the Farmington, now Moonstone Bank, and FTX/Alameda. He was one of the leads on Alameda with Carolyn Ellison. He left to go live on his boat. I don't know if you guys remember
Nick and Hussein started investigating FTX and SBF. In that period, that's when Sam left. So they don't know whether it's related to the investigation because they started going deep. Like what Hussein, who was speaking earlier, and Nick did was intense. And you can see by all the things they knew before everyone else, the block, the hack, the commingling of funds. They were ringing the alarm for months and months and months. Now, Charles, I see you unmuted.
Just real quickly. So this, to be clear, this is a standard financial investigation. My comments about RICO weren't the application 1970 RICO Act. It's a RICO style investigation, in that the kinds of things that FTX was doing is what you would expect to see from a criminal enterprise. So you have to use a different set of investigative tools and a different set of chain of custody of evidence and so forth to be able to actually prosecute correctly. When you investigate a normal financial organization, even Enron, there's an assumption of fairly good record keeping, third-party auditors. There's a chain of command, and most people in the organizations usually follow the law. So you have an enormous amount of stuff to start with. When you investigate a criminal organization, first you usually have a low level of sophistication, connect the low parts of the chain to the upper parts of the chain. So there's different investigation techniques that you use to be able to penetrate and climb that ladder. And I suspect that it's going to have to be the case here in FTX after the comments in the bankruptcy filing and also other things that have been revealed in an investigation. As for political corruption, it works kind of in three different ways. So there's corruption in that a large amount of stolen money or money in question was donated to political candidates. And actually, by SBF statements, he said that he donated both Democrats and Republicans, publicly to Democrats and dark money to Republicans. Almost certainly somebody at the FEC is going to at least validate, look at this, and try to get an understanding of whether that was lawful or not. Then there's an FCPA, Foreign Corrupt Powers Act, and that's you can't bribe people. And there's probably going to be some allegations, especially as people are pulled into the circle, that there was bribery in the Caribbean or in other jurisdictions so that they could get more favorable treatment. And that's a crime to SBF. As for diplomatic means, the U.S. government, you're absolutely right, typically doesn't care too much about what happens in one place or the other, unless there's a substantial U.S. impact in that matter. And they're few and far between, but that's not something I think they're going to get into in that respect.
You actually can bribe. It just can't be your main course of business. I used to do work in the FCPA. It was an interesting period, and it's really hard to get good prosecution going because it has that RICO characteristic, right? Which is really hard to pin down those specific actions where the crime happened because they're all disguised. And if you look at it, a lot of the disguises here happened in the fact that they approved financial transactions with emojis or through text messages that aren't properly recorded. I would like to see what Armanino and Prager Metis, which is the accounting firm that they had that apparently did their audits but have only one office and it's in the metaverse. So like the choice of accountants is it speaks a lot, honestly, in terms of what their intentions were, because they certainly could have afforded having one of the big three accounting firms and chose not to do that. My only point about the RICO actions is that they're using that. Several of these class actions are actually trying to bring more RICO cases, which I think is really interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see whether or not that's successful. They're nearly all, again, in Florida. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what the charges that they bring are and how successful it is.
Yeah, but in those cases, you throw everything in the kitchen sink when you file the lawsuit. And a lot of these cases will be settled without litigation. But I mean, Tom Brady, Giselle, Kevin O'Leary, all these other people got spun into this. And they're just going to maximize the level of pain until they kind of bite and then cut something. So it's a standard practice. And I suspect that when they have a chance to respond to these, that things will change a bit.
I'm just looking at more news being shared with me here. Actually, I wanna touch on a lot of people are messaging me to touch on what's happening with Binance as we wait for more information on SBF and his arrest. Charles, I've seen the news. I haven't been able to catch up with it. Have you looked at all the FUD, the news about Binance in the last 24 hours?
You know, people keep saying stuff about Binance. I guess there's a DOJ thing here and there, and you know, CZ is kind of the favorite political punching bag for certain people in the U.S. government. I like him. He's a friend of mine. He's always been nice to me. We've always had great, cordial relationships, and we've had a great time working with them as a layer one, answering technical questions about integration.
So
he's got a vast empire.
He like, if I tell you,
think about a vast empire. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll let you finish. Sorry, no, I'll let you finish. And I've got some news about Binance that was just shared with me. Not too major, but I'll mention it as soon as you're done.
I mean, the thing about having a vast empire is you have thousands of people running around. You're in tons of jurisdictions. You're handling hundreds of billions of dollars of people's money. And in many cases, you can't get complete regulatory clarity over the things you'd like to get complete clarity over. So you kind of make a decision of how Ned Flanders you want to get. Are you going to go full Ned Flanders, half Ned Flanders? And you know, every CEO has a different preference and risk tolerance in that respect. So when you look at things like Coinbase and Kraken, they tend to be belt and suspenders. When you look at things like Binance, globally they tend to be things like belt. And so it wouldn't surprise me that there's going to be some civil thing here, perhaps an allegation of a criminal thing there. But it's always important to take this in context. At any given day, there's some civil thing or criminal thing against JP Morgan Chase. There's been $19 billion of fines, including criminal trials over the last 20 years against Chase. And that's the largest bank in the world. So it's always important to have context that as you grow, you tend to accumulate these things based upon your risk profile. But at the end of the day, the thing that really matters is there a valid accounting? Is there good auditing? Do they actually have customer funds they claim that they have? Is there good cybersecurity? Are there good audit controls and process? And they've been around for quite a bit of time, and they seem to have a lot of competent people there, at least from my experience working with them.
Charles, any prediction on how the impact of this XRP Ripple lawsuit is going to have?
Well, that's a little off topic, but I did make a statement. I heard from a friend of mine who's in the legal circles that there may be a settlement or decision on the summary judgment on December 15th. I think that's before the judge goes on vacation on the 17th. If not, it's likely going to get resolved Q1, but I don't have any more information than that. It's just something I shared in an AMA.
So back to Binance. So CoinDesk just announced, let me see when it was, 4:23, an hour ago. Binance endured net $1 million in the past 24 hours, according to Nansen. And then crypto market makers Jump Trading and Wintermute are among the largest withdrawers. Nothing major, just them being safe and playing it safe. Or for me, I just see it like, you know, I don't see it as too major. $1 billion is a lot of money, but considering the reports and after what happened with FTX, it's pretty normal for players to be safe than be sorry.
Yeah, it's worth considering too, right? That Binance it's much larger than FTX, both in terms of, you know, the total volume that they're doing on an average day, as well as assets under management. I think another, you know, angle to this as well that's like really interesting is, you know, obviously CZ's ties to BNB chain. From a market cap standpoint, you know, BNB chain is the third largest layer one after Bitcoin and Ethereum. You know, if you look at the history of it, it was launched as a fork of GetETH, and you know, Binance was very close to it. They've tried to separate themselves over time, but you know, as I was telling you on the phone earlier, Mario, CZ still owns a huge chunk of BNB, the token, so he could always dip into that if he needed to defend Binance, the core business. And I think that is a major difference between what we're seeing with Binance and FTX is that Sam didn't have his own layer one blockchain that he could mobilize to protect his centralized exchange business.
I have no concerns about Binance. I do want to say before Simon jumps in that the outflows in that day, in those 24 hours of 900 and something million, are the biggest since November 13, which is 2 days after FTX filed for bankruptcy protection. So just something to keep in mind. Again, I've been pretty supportive of Binance to date. But I think there's just a lot. Like, has anyone looked into the auditors and their the report that Zero Hedge did on the audit? Simon, did you look at that article?
I did, yeah. I mean, I think the key thing here is that we don't know. A company of this size, like Binance, is pushing some, bigger than many banks. And so, the importance, they are a too big to fail in crypto type of financial institution. And so normally you'd have public standard, accounts to rely upon. But we just don't know with Binance. So we could guess whatever, but the bigger the numbers, it doesn't mean that the assets and liabilities match up. We don't have a full appreciation of how yield is generated. Is yield just the peer-to-peer market where it's people that want to go short and lending to people, or is it some other kind of practices? We just don't know. So anyone could guess, and there's no real mechanism. Proof of reserves is a good step forward, but that's just. In fact, there's a danger of transparency that is somewhat misleading because you don't know the other side of the equation. So the audits, the article was that the auditor wouldn't get behind it. It was definitely framed in a somewhat sensationalized way and fuddy kind of way.
Zero Hedge. Yeah, just for the record, Zero Hedge is known to, as far as I'm aware, known to sensationalize however you say it, to make things seem more extreme than they are, just to get more attention. So yeah, just want to make that clear as well.
I mean, if we look at the Wall Street Journal article, we saw that the asset, there was around a $245 million discrepancies based on like the Bitcoin price at the current time. But I guess the thing with a lot of this Binance stuff is, until we get like full transparency on all this stuff, I don't think anyone can feel like 100% comfortable. And that's not to FUD Binance, because like you, Mario, I'm a big proponent of Binance, and CZ's always been very nice, and I support Binance, trade on Binance. But I don't think we can like sit here and say that we're 100% comfortable and things are 100% transparent, because I mean, they're clearly not. But what I will say is them taking that next step forward to initialize proof of reserves, that is a good sign, at least from an optics perspective, that at least they're trying to be more transparent. But until proof of liability.
But did they? I have a question. Did they have a choice? Because CZ came on this show, and then hours later, I think he tweeted about the proof of reserves. Did they have any choice after FTX the second? Like, everyone lost faith and everything. Remember the spaces we had where we didn't know who to trust anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane times. So yeah,
well,
I don't know.
We used to have something in our industry, and it seems to have disappeared a bit. It was created by Trace Mayer. Tone will remember, Proof for Keys. And so every February, everyone used to withdraw their coins from an exchange to get it so low. This was before there was like excessive leverage. But we used to all withdraw anything from an exchange to test whether they could meet it. And
you know what happened though? You know what's happened over the years? It's the fact that the retail component of crypto has got so much bigger, and kind of the original ethos that a lot of us had back then, and I only joined 2017-18, but even beforehand, like the ethos people had was a lot more kind of geared towards Bitcoin and, not your keys, not your coins. But what happened was 2019, 2020, obviously 2021, a lot of retail came into the market. The easiest way to onboard those users is through exchanges. So I think like the ethos of that period was kind of lost a little bit, and then people just started, I guess, speculating on a lot of exchanges and kind of getting some backlash. But things kind of deteriorated in that sense as you get more retail participants in.
Just quickly before I give the mic to Tara and Alexandra, and Alex, I think there's some reports the team is sending, so I'll let you go through it. I'll forward it to you now. And Charles, I've sent you through my Telegram. If you ever want to DM me, if you're having technical issues, you want to jump into the space, you can hit me up.
I can hear you now.
Perfect. So just for the audience, two important developments. For anyone that doesn't know, Mark Andreessen is coming on the show tomorrow. So go on my profile, you'll see the tweet there, and I'll pin it above in a bit to set your reminders. Also, we just had, so as you know, the next drop, the leaks by Elon of the Twitter files, or the drops, the next one will be covering censorship during COVID. And obviously it's a very sensitive topic, so I'm trying to get all the best doctors on stage, and we have Dr. Drew coming in. We have a whole bunch. Dave Asprey just confirmed about 5 minutes ago that he'll be coming in. We have a board member of Pfizer, which I'm sure a lot of people will hate, that's coming in as well to get a really good discussion going on. So it's going to be on Thursday. Will be the first discussion among a series of shows. So make sure you set your reminders for that as well. Tara, thanks a lot for joining us. It's been a while. You happy with the news?
It's been so long. Oh my gosh. Yes. Poor Mario. I don't know how you ever rest between all of this breaking news and then Twitter files. I feel like they're doing this to you on purpose to ensure that you never sleep again. But wonderful job. Amazing space. I wanted to also just really quickly on the Twitter files, or I'm sorry, the COVID Fauci files, whatever you want to call them, that are, potentially dropping tomorrow. I wanted to ask you if there's any way to get some of the doctors who were banned previously, if they've been reinstated, or if other people could have them kind of call in on their line on Twitter to join the space as well, because I know several amazing doctors were banned from Twitter for, questioning certain narratives during that time.
Yeah, please send them through. If you know any of them, hit me up on Telegram. This is more than two on this topic, but yeah, please do send them through. And yeah, appreciate you being here. Go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick in regard to the whole SBF arrest. And yes, I am happy. I am happy that he's been arrested. I think that, he should be after everything that's gone on. I'm just curious, do you guys suppose that the timing of this is just coincidental in the fact that he was supposed to testify in front of Congress tomorrow? And maybe this is something you've already talked about. I just thought it was very strange timing.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised, because there's no incentive for them to arrest him prior to testimony. You'd want him to go under oath before Congress, because the best case scenario, he doesn't say anything problematic, but the more likely scenario is because of his pattern of behavior, Congress.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but could that information be detrimental to the actual, where he's at in the Bahamas? Could it be detrimental to that government there to the point that they've detained him in order to not allow him to, testify?
My understanding is that the Bahamas arrested him at the request of the U.S. government in preparation for extradition from the letter that they posted. I think probably the reason why they arrested him is that they got some information that he's potentially a flight risk, and they wanted to scoop him up before he fled to a different jurisdiction, because probably he was aware that there was no way out, and there is an active investigation, and his family is super well connected, so someone may have leaked that to him, and maybe he was preparing to leave and he was under surveillance, and they realized that, so they decided that they had to get him. But it made no sense, the timing of the arrest. I figured they would have arrested him the day after the congressional hearing at the very least.
Yeah, that's a very Alex. Sorry, go ahead, Tara.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, because he agreed to do it. So I mean, and maybe he agreed on paper, but then behind the scenes, like you said, Charles was a flight risk. So to do the testimony, I don't know. It's just very odd timing to me that it's happening the day before. Or is there a potential that he could still do a Zoom testimony while in jail in the Bahamas, or be extradited quickly here?
They've got a better chance of forcing him to comply with the subpoena if he's under arrest. If he's under arrest at the behest of the government, then he will testify before Congress. If there was a chance that he wasn't going to testify before Congress, that is probably the reason that they chose this particular time. But remember, he actually did flee to Argentina before, and then came back.
No, he didn't. That was a false lead. He wasn't in Argentina.
Because that was reported in a couple of the newspapers. That
He was
wasn't.
Yeah. So we were watching it.
He didn't go
Yeah.
there.
So I'll give the news. So Alexander, what happened? It was during our space that we watched. So someone came up and said that there was his jet. So the license of his jet, and there's a tracker that tracks jets. Said his question I wanted to ask as well is, Charles, you talked about him potentially, and obviously it's pure speculation, but it makes sense. Like if he was planning to leave the Bahamas, but like we know from Hussein, who's been again the person that's investigated, Hussein Nick investigated Sam more than anyone. I'll try to bring up Nick up on stage. He's glitching a bit. We know that he's probably sitting on billions based on the amount of money that they funneled out. And we know his parents are pretty well off. We know he's really well connected with politicians. So my question is, why was he still in the Bahamas? Was it, as Martin Shkreli said, it just took him a while for all this to hit him, to know that he's in deep shit?
The police in the Bahamas visited
It's
him,
an interesting question, and that's probably why there's a lot more to the story than we're aware.
Sorry, quickly, Charles. Silver, yeah, I don't think Charles can hear you, Silver. So what I'll do is I'll bring you down and back up, Silver. So maybe it should fix the issue. Sorry, Charles, I'll let you speak while I fix the glitch.
Was in here?
No, I did not. I usually don't call out. I don't call out people in the audience just not to make him feel uncomfortable. But yeah, David would love you to come up. Feel free to request to speak. But yeah,
I think Charles can explain what he was just saying. Let him go first. You may as well.
Yeah. So I this is why I think there's a lot more to the story than we were aware of, because honestly, he had a window of time to facilitate some mechanism to get to Dubai or get to a country that at least it's extradition for so long, and seemed to have this aura of confidence that not only was he going to survive this, but actually have an opportunity to be an entrepreneur again. And he attended the New York Times summit and all these other things. It's just very bizarre. It's almost as if he was getting very poor information from somebody. For example, maybe somebody was leading him on, making him believe that there was no risk. It almost reminds me of Epstein. When he was arrested the first time, he had this confidence when he was in Florida in the jailhouse, and he would just walk around naked and sleep with his lawyer, and he just believed he was God. But then when he got arrested the second time, shortly before he died, he was terrified, and he realized the gravity of the situation. So I here, given how much money is involved, and just the safety risk of, you've stolen 10.
Alex, I've just sent you through some news. If you want to quickly check my WhatsApp, keep an eye out on it. And the breaking news group, there's some information shared. So I'll let you go through it and maybe share it with the audience once you read it. Is that okay, Alex? Alex V?
Yep,
there doesn't need to be the sensationalized explanation as well. I mean, he had a business there. The country was really giving support to our industry. They were creating custom regulations. They were taking it, very seriously. It was a jurisdiction that supported our industry, and he was still there. I think we came to the conclusion that if you know that you're in trouble and you're being extradited,
But he knows. He knows.
But
not
everyone that's in trouble is going to flee the country. That I guess not everyone wants to become a fugitive.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, bro. Go ahead. Thanks for fixing the glitch. Go ahead, man.
This is Jim Lewis with Wall Street Silver. Alameda, Caroline, when all this went down initially, she was in Hong Kong. And if you guys will remember, in the past recent history, they moved Alameda's headquarters from the Bahamas to Hong Kong. And extradition is much more difficult from China than it is the Bahamas. So essentially Alameda, we refer to this as a different company, but when you say Alameda, you have to think that's 90% Sam Bankman-Fried. All right, that was his little personal trading account. It wasn't a hedge fund with other clients. It was his money, right? And what I think was probably the plan was they saw this coming. She was in Hong Kong to get established there. And he was probably eventually going to follow and base himself in Hong Kong, which is a much better jurisdiction to fight. I looked it up. They still do have an extradition treaty, but sliding from Hong Kong over into China or any number of Asian countries that don't have extradition treaties with the United States would have been much easier. So I suspect that was the plan, was to get out of the Bahamas and re-establish in Hong Kong. And I'm shocked that she came back to New York City. When I saw
that's
that
crazy.
Caroline
that's crazy. Yeah.
Grabbing coffee across the street from the U.S. Attorney's office in New York City a few days ago, the only reason that she would have to give up the safety of she was already in Hong Kong, probably with hundreds of millions of dollars at her disposal. The fact that she was in New York City just told me immediately she's the one who flipped first. And she probably started singing like a bird because her parents got to her. And still have a life. But the other
man,
and all this plays out, mark my words, she's the one who was singing. She's pointing to where all the skeletons are buried. More difficult. But if they have someone like Caroline or one of the others who can guide them and tell them, where to go and what to look at and explain the codes, someone who might actually still have copies of all the text messages, if they have that person helping them on the inside, it just makes the case monumentally easier for them to prosecute. And so that's why one of them will get a good deal, and I suspect it's Caroline.
And just to kind of jump in on that, Wall Street Silver, this is what Mario was pinging me about. One of the reasons perhaps why Sam felt confident staying in the Bahamas is that as part of the bankruptcy documents, there was an email thread that was leaked between Sam and some of the Bahamian regulators. And in that, you basically see confirmation that, and I quote from the email, "We would be more than happy to open up withdrawals for all Bahamian customers on FTX so that they can tomorrow fully withdraw all of their assets, making them fully whole." So maybe, he thought that he was going to get some sort of bribery deal there where he would be protected by the Bahamian regulators in exchange for allowing Bahamian customers to be the first out. And so maybe that's another wrinkle in this of, he thought he was going to be protected and, he was actually misled.
I recall back on right after that whole story with the Argentina airplane flight just turned out to be wrong. And then there was proof that he was actually this is like day 2 or 3 when everyone was freaking out, that there was a report that the authorities in the Bahamas had visited him and they told him, "You're not authorized to leave the country of the Bahamas while we're doing this investigation." And I don't know if, maybe they grab his passport or other documents that make it much more difficult. at that time. But there were reports at that time that the local authorities in the Bahamas were preventing him from leaving during the investigation. That's why he probably has not fled in the past month. That's just my suspicion.
Yeah, I don't know. He had enough money to flee. Meta Law, I'll give you the mic right after Alexandra, because I know you have some information to share about Binance, which to me is, in my opinion, a bigger topic, a more important topic. But Alexandra.
Yes, so, I mean, we could talk about Binance. The one thing that I wanted to mention now is we were talking earlier about what was going on with Binance and FTX, and you can't trust anybody. And really, what I think the major issue is that the transparency that we preach is only available for the user's transactions. We don't really have transparency, particularly with centralized exchanges. We need to get proof of reserves, proof of code, proof of liquidity, and don't confuse the three things together, because right now people mix them up as if they're the same thing. Like, even what was it, Brian Armstrong called Binance's proof of reserves, he confused it with proof of liquidity. These are different things, and these are really important concepts. We are not demanding enough of people. We need to demand, look, if you say that this is transparent, it can't just be our transactions that are transparent. It has to be theirs as well. And granted, decentralization is not a point in time, it is a process. But as it's moving towards the process, things have to be forcibly revealed, unless there's a voluntary revelation of information by the people who are in charge. I really want FTX to not be about, oh, this scandal happened or that scandal happened. We've had so many. We're exhausted. We don't need more Alex Mashinskys and people who look like they would be a financial genius, when in fact, the people who are calling them financial geniuses apparently are completely unaware of what a financial genius actually is. They just know where it seems to come from. And I want all of us to take this information. Between parties. This is something that makes me extremely angry.
And I've got some breaking news quickly. Let me know if that's serious. Peter was on stage a few seconds ago. But Alexandra, he says the following: the SEC has authorized separate charges relating to his violations of securities laws to be filed publicly tomorrow in SDNY. So I don't think that's surprising, but just thought it'd be worth adding. And Mr. Grewal is an American attorney and prosecutor who served as the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey. So yeah, former Attorney General of New Jersey. Not sure what he's doing now.
Was that the guy that gave
he's
the
an
speech?
SEC official.
The SEC charges are civil charges. The DOJ covers the criminal side. It's not unusual to have both sides, to have both civil and criminal charges. But these are not actually just the criminal. So when the SEC has both criminal and civil charges, they will siphon off the criminal part to DOJ. DOJ's charges, though, it sounds like, are completely separate from the security side. So there may be additional charges for the DOJ. That's the thing that you take from here, is that there may be additional criminal charges as well as these civil SEC charges.
And Orbis, you've made a comparison. You jumped off the space to make a comparison for us with what's his name? What's his name, Orbis?
Madoff.
Bernie Madoff. So can you tell us the charges towards Sam compared to Bernie?
Yes, so I just pinned a tweet up there, and Bernie, as we know, was sentenced to 150 years of imprisonment. And in the thread on the second tweet, you can see what were the 11 counts and how much was the maximum. Now, I'm looking at the maximum sentences uh, for the crimes that right now, SBF is being booked for. And remember, these sentences are for a single count. Now, in US, double jeopardy, and we have lawyers here, so they can provide better explanation. But double jeopardy prevents you from being charged by the same state twice for the same crime, but you could be charged for different counts of the same crime in different states. So we need to keep that in mind. And also, the judge could actually order the sentences to be served consecutively, or the sentences can be served at the same time concurrently. So I don't know if there are any he can be convicted for 30 for 20 to 30 years for wire fraud, be back booked for the maximum sentences. And finally, for money laundering, you could have 20 years. But in Bernie Madoff's case, for money laundering, he was charged for 3 separate counts of money laundering, and his sentence in all was 150 years. Now, if we look at the maximum sentences today for all of these frauds, we can see that it's already 120 years. And again, back to what Alexandra said, that he could be booked for other offenses too. So we are looking for like 4 lifetimes of jail, possibly, and would love to hear, others' thoughts on this.
There's a very complicated, federal sentencing score point system, and there's all sorts of additional points that get added on based on the size of the crime, the number of dollars involved. There's extra enhancements, extra points, and you could have all those same charges, but the total dollar amount could be $500,000. Well, someone who does exactly the same charges but with a $500,000 crime get 150 years. It's the sheer they go after.
There's a breaking news here from Unusual Whales. It says here that the SEC has charged SBF with violations of securities laws. Whoops. God damn.
Yeah, I just shared that with Mario.
You just shared that?
And
So do you think?
that
That was an SDNY. Oh, okay.
Do you think Kevin O'Leary doubles down, or this is the point of?
Oh yeah, I swear. Is it odd, Simon? You're always pretty objective on things, and everyone's hating on Kevin like crazy. Is it so? Kevin was paid $15 million to be a spokesperson, which is insane of a number, even for someone like Kevin. That's a crazy number, and I've been in discussions and with negotiations with Kevin, trying to get him as an advisor for NFT Tech, a public company, and we're not talking about those types of numbers. It's not even close. So, what's your take on him still mildly supporting Sam on various media outlets? Is it just his pure opinion? Could be his opinion. Maybe he genuinely thinks like
stage in life where, being paid to be a spokesperson or promote something just isn't worth the risk anymore. And so I don't quite understand, once you reach a certain stage, whether that money's worth it. So, that's that one. But I think he's just doubling down. I think he was, firstly, he obviously built a relationship, took the 15 million. He probably thinking about, maybe if I defend this for the right period of time, it won't look like I took the proceeds of crime, depending on where it goes. Maybe a bit of denial, hoping that it might work out. But yeah, I think he was just continuing to do his job of what he was paid 15 million to do. And now he's just reached the point where, okay, I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to reverse my position here.
Charles?
Yeah.
Yeah, I ran into Kevin before all this. These other things like crazy and Cardano's crap, and it didn't really seem like he had a lot of depth to it. Unless it's Madoff, it's going to be safe, it's going to be fine, and it's a quick, cool, easy 15 million to make, and he's probably got some ancillary business that he was able to monetize through the industry. And now I think he's honestly panicking because he's in a situation where not only does he have class action lawsuits, it's created an enormous amount properly vets people. I think he has no option right now other than to try to support more honest during the discovery process and under oath and these other mechanisms. So there's going to be a lot of this, and it's the same with Tom Brady and Giselle. They look more like victims who were taken in, and they honestly believed he was going to do great things, and they put a lot of their personal
that weren't paying him and really backed the companies that were paying him. So I don't think there was any integrity behind his endorsements. It was just simply...
And that's why he started investing in his own exchanges. So although I think that what you're saying, yeah, at the initial start...
He'll be back.
We lost you, but he was. Remember, he was a crypto critic. He was literally coming out and saying how he hates our industry, and until he met SBF and got paid, he switched from hating crypto to loving crypto.
I'm gonna go on a limb.
I think it wasn't the actual... Sorry, I think it wasn't the actual 15 million that he's interested in. Much more, wealth. This guy was after billions. He wasn't after millions.
I have a question for you, and I'm going to go on a limb here, and I don't like I'm not making any accusation, just speculation based on everything you've said. We're seeing a lot of people that were involved in everything FTX Sam is doing either stay silent or support him behind the scenes. Is it possible that Kevin is worried about Sam saying things that couldn't get Kevin into trouble?
100%. That from day one, that's our thoughts. The only person that can take Kevin down is the close relationship he had with SBF. And so forget about, we know that, we suspect that Kevin and SBS have direct relationships. So it wasn't there was a third party between them. So the only person that can snitch on Kevin and actually say what Kevin knew and Kevin's involvement is Sam. So if he says anything outside, yes, there might be a deal cut where Sam starts putting all the other guys on the chopping board.
Do you have any evidence? Again, from all the investigation you did.
Come on. It's like, I don't know who else.
But the family fallout.
There's one more that you forgot. There's Dan Friedberg is another key person who I guarantee you, once they enter this, there's no way Dan's coming out this clean. It's just impossible.
Oh yeah. Anyone who was taking millions of dollars.
There's news on that though. Just that exact thing. An hour ago came out that the parents at Stanford Law School are now being investigated, and I think that they were, what is it called?
Hold on. Did that just?
It was an hour ago, and it's.
Is that Sam's parents or someone else?
Yeah,
who's being investigated?
His parents. The headline is "The Parents in the Middle of FTX's Collapse